Should you give up your BTO to buy a condo? My name is Randall, and today we are going to share with you about whether or not is it important to consider to give up your BTO as of today. Before we get started, do help me like this video so that I can reach more people out there and give me a lot of encouragement to create more videos like this. Here are the things that I'll be sharing with you today. Number 1, the time versus age analogy. Number 2, why should you explore your options before it's too late? Number 3, we'll explore PLH model, which is the prime location HDB model, and how does it affect you as a buyer today. So today, I'm going to share with you a bit of my friend's story where she just recently gotten her BTO and she's actually very happy that she managed to get a location that she likes a lot. Let me share with you on why she recently started to think a bit more, because along the time, the construction of the BTO took quite a while. And especially in terms of the current BTO, the HDB actually commits to a 4.3 years construction time, where sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter, but a lot of times it's unpredictable. For example, during COVID, a lot of people are affected, especially when they buy a BTO and they needed to wait for 5 or even 6 years to construct finish. A lot of things like that affects a timeline of a couple as well, because most of them actually have a timeline plan, like for example, in the next few years they're getting married and all that. But because of the BTO construction time, they delay this whole process. One thing is important is that personally I went through 3 property cycles already, where I bought my riverfront and sold it away. Then after that, I bought Castle Green, I sold it away, and I bought Lentor Mansion. So along this time, I only took 5.5 years. Just imagine it's similar to the 4.3 years of the construction time in BTO itself. Yeah, so I actually gained 518,000 along this whole journey of this property purchase itself. So number 1, let us understand a little bit more of the cycles. Because for example, for myself, when I first bought my first property, I was actually 27. If I waited for my BTO, I only just moved in just about 1.5 years ago. So imagine if I bought that, I actually needed to wait another 5 years to do my next move. And by then I'll be about 36, 37. And I can't imagine at that point in time how much more the property prices would be, especially if I want to upgrade. So if you are planning to buy your first property, my advice to most couples out there is actually, instead of considering a BTO, is to actually consider a resale within a very nice location, not too old. Instead of waiting for the construction of 4.3 years, you actually just move in, and 5 years later you can actually sell already and move to your next property. But of course, if you are talking about BTO, the whole commitment time is very long. It's about a 9-year period. Today, many of you are facing the thought process of whether or not should you give it up. And maybe some of the penalties are about 60,000. So just imagine 60,000 divided by 9 years is actually a very little per year difference itself. And because I do meet a lot of my clients that actually been through this phase of buying a BTO and selling and upgrading, a lot of them have situations where commitments start to change. For example, they have their first child and second child, then the third child. A lot of them cannot visualize themselves moving to another property that easily because a lot of commitments are changing. So a lot of times we have to use our age as our benefit to kickstart the whole process a lot earlier. So even more difficult is the PLH model. Just imagine a 10 years minimum occupation period of living inside, and you need to wait, the construction time is about 14 years gone. This whole 14 years time period, a lot of opportunities will be presented to you, but you cannot take any action because you're still tied to the HDB rulings. So using myself as an example, I actually made 518,000 within 5.5 years. So just imagine about a 10-year time frame, my personal asset growth is actually possible to be doubled. For example, maybe about $1 million. So just imagine if you have this capital growth or even asset growth, right? A lot of things are much more possible for you. This is actually something that many buyers need to ask themselves as of today. Point number 2, why should you explore your options before it's too late? To those buyers currently still waiting for the keys to your BTO, there's a lot of opportunities you can start to explore. If we do not explore today and you collect your keys to your BTO, there's nothing we can change. This is actually very crucial because one of my recent buyers, I actually do meet them up when it was during COVID. They actually bought a Pongo BTO and they were actually waiting for the keys to their BTO. So while waiting for the keys to their BTO, we had a discussion. And because the construction time for the BTO was delayed, they actually decided to give it up. At that point in time when we were giving it up, HDB actually allowed them to receive full refund. On top of that, did not take away their first-timer advantage. Yeah, so actually it's actually very fruitful that they thought through this whole process and they bought the Vales, which is a pre-MOP EC, and they actually managed to get a grant as well when they bought this EC itself. So during this process, they actually bought it below 800,000 for a 2-bed, 2-bath unit. And as of today, the property value has increased to about 1.1 million. Just imagine they did not take this step of exploring. They would have missed this opportunity throughout. And right now, they just moved into their BTO and needed to wait till 2029. So this whole process itself actually does have very important lessons that we can learn, especially like how can we plan ahead in terms of our timeline. Because in terms of this whole process itself, age is one factor. And as age continues to go up, the banks doesn't like us a lot. Because banks actually like young people. And of course, the best years is when the loan tenure is 30 years. But after 35, the loan tenure goes down every year by 1. As a buyer, we need to start to explore and start to understand that time is always not on our side. We have to start to leverage early and actually plan to upgrade our portfolio to a much bigger portfolio if we can. So right now, for my buyers that bought the Vales, they're actually very happy. They actually can start to sell their EC right now after the 3 years seller stamp duty has completed, which is at the end of this year. So just imagine if they did not take this move last time when it was 2021, they couldn't have done this right now and start to explore and future upgrade again. Because this whole process of upgrading and all that, it's very meaningful that I see a lot of couples feel very happy along this journey. So as a buyer, if you're waiting for your keys, right, do sit down to start to analyze what's the options available. Even if you do not take the actions, at least you explore. If we don't explore, we will live in regrets. Because things can change. And we always need to analyze what can we improve to do better. Before we proceed to point number 3, do feel free to leave your comments on to how you felt about this concept. Point number 3, this is especially important for buyers that bought under the PLH model. So exploring options doesn't mean that you need to take action into the options being shared. One of my friends recently just moved to BTO and their careers actually did progress to a better stage where they actually are earning much more than their initial purchase. So during this time, they actually realized that they could have bought a private very easily. So exploring options means that you start to see your current position, whether or not it makes sense to transition to a private property right now, and you decide whether you want to take action to it. You do not want to regret not even exploring. So as a buyer that went through phases of buying the flat already, you have to look at what are the options, whether or not you can go into the private or even plan a 10-year plan where you buy this PLH model flat. So under the PLH model scheme, there's actually a part of the grant that you need to pay back to the government, especially when you buy the flat itself. So you need to plan ahead if you really do plan to buy a private property in the future. Start saving money as of today. Each year you can set aside maybe about a few $1,000s and plan ahead. When your income starts to increase, you also can save up some money such that you can buy a private property in the future. So for my own personal preferences, I actually prefer to have the flexibility of time. That is why I bought the private properties at the start, because I do not want to be tied to a BTO or even a HDB flat where the MOP time I cannot do anything. So even for my own Castle Green purchase, I was given the option to sell and pay the seller stamp duty. But however, in a HDB during the MOP period, we can't choose to pay seller stamp duty in order to sell the flat. We have to wait till the 5 years is completed in order to take action. So that's something that I felt very important, that we need to look at it and explore it right away. So in conclusion, always explore your options before it's too late. And do look at the options instead of looking at regret in the future. Again, if you like this video, do feel free to like, share and subscribe to this channel and hit the notifications bell to get notified for more videos I'll be uploading in the near future. See you everyone.